Hi everyone, this is Elizabeth at craftsbyhappystamper.com. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to be making this flower pot card. It's a Mother's Day card. It's the first of two projects as part of the One Stamp at a Time blog hop that's going on today. And you can click on my blog to see the second project. And this is the flower pot card. You can see it actually has a pull-out insert where you write your sentiment. And now we're going to get started. So to start, you need a piece of 3.5 by 9 inch cardstock. This is baked brown sugar, which I love. I hate that it's retiring just in a couple months. And then I'm going to fold it so that it's looks like a Z there. And you could take any decorative border punch, but I'm using a scalloped border punch edge here to make a decorative edge for the front of the flower pot card. And I actually have to punch it twice in order to go all the way across the 3.5 inches. Now I don't want it to just be baked brown sugar, so cardstock, so I'm taking the hardwood stamp set and soft suede ink, and I'm going to make it look like the flower pot is made out of hardwood. So you could see that I'm covering it completely. I actually folded it so that it will look like it's running at the same area, and now I'm trying to frantically search for a piece of scrap paper. There we go. This is part of my Filofax I took apart, so so I have part of it done, but I want the whole thing to look like it's made out of hardwood. So I need to flip it over and do the other side so that it looks the same on both sides of the flower pot. And then this helps make sure that not only do your fingers not get so inky, but that you can get right up to the edge so that it looks very continuous. The great thing about this hardwood stamp is it has very obvious panels, so you can line them up pretty easily so that they all match, and it looks like one continuous piece of hardwood. So the reason why I did that flap was because the flap folds over and you could see it. Now at the last minute I decided that I also wanted the insert to have a hardwood back, so that's what I'm doing right now is putting a hardwood back stamp onto the back of the sentiment that pulls out of the flower pot. And that was soft suede ink. But now I'm going to close that up. Of course, I had some issues with that, but don't we all sometimes, especially when you're trying to hurry. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to line up one corner with a 1/4 inch mark and the other end of it with where the blade cuts, and I couldn't get it to cut all the way through, so I just used that as a marker, and then I took my scissors and finished cutting it. And this just gives it a slight diagonal so it looks more like a pot than just a box. You could make a more dramatic diagonal if you like, and if you press harder you could probably get it to go through 2 pieces of cardstock at a time if you wanted, but this was good enough for me. I don't mind cutting a little bit with my paper snips. I really like those paper snips, so doesn't matter to me. But now it's just a little bit slanted, and that's the flower pot. It's completely done. I'm actually not going to use any adhesive to hold the flower pot together. I'm just going to use this Wild Wasabi seam ribbon to hold it together. But I have a really hard time making pretty bows, so I'm going to cheat, and I'm just going to cut a piece of ribbon that goes all the way around the card and use glue dots to stick it down in the front, and then I'm going to make a bow separately and use another glue dot to put the bow on top of where I joined these 2 pieces of ribbon, so you can't tell that I have that there. But some of you might be very good at bows and be able to tie a bow on there very easily, but I have a really hard time with that. Even with that, I still struggled with the bow. And to spare you all, I just cut out a bunch of the film since it took me a ridiculously long time to make this bow. And that's the final bow. So I just clipped little pretty ends and used some glue dots to stick it to the card. And that's the only thing that holds the pot together, so it doesn't need anything else. Now I'm just using the modern label punch to punch out a piece of Wild Wasabi cardstock that matches the ribbon. And I'm stamping Happy Mother's Day. This is a stamp from the Teeny Tiny Wishes stamp set, and you can use the word window punch to cut it out. I don't even try to make it straight when I stamp it because you can just turn the punch to make it straight when you're punching it out. And I like to use liquid glue to adhere these cardstocks, even though that's off camera and you can't really see it. So I I just like that it gives you a little bit of time to wiggle it and make sure it's in the exact spot. And then I use some dimensionals to adhere it to the front of my flower pot. Now I'm putting just Whisper White cardstock onto my insert so that I can put my flowers on the top. And I'm going to put the flowers on the top of this insert. So it's easiest for me if I tuck it in. So I tucked it all in, and now I could see where the flowers need to go. And all of these flowers were made using the Flower Shop stamp set, and I stamped in Versamark and then used the Whisper White embossing powder and used my heat tool to set it already. And I did that off camera so that you didn't have to wait. But before I attached those, I decided I needed some leaves. So I'm using the Bird Builder punch and Wild Wasabi cardstock to punch out some leaves. And I like to do everything in odds, so I ended up punching out 5 sets of leaves because 3 just didn't look like enough. Now I'm just putting some snail adhesive down on the top of the paper so I know where I could put my flowers. And now I am just arranging my flowers whichever way, and you could do this whichever way you see fit, but since the tape is already down, I can sort of arrange it and then just add more tape. And I'm going over the edge here so it looks like the flowers are really filling everything up. And then I could take some liquid glue and just put a little bit on the edges and tuck it in wherever I think it looks good. And I already made this card once before I made this video, so I had an idea as to where I did and did not want the leaves. And to warn you, this card, if you want this card to fit in a traditional A2 size envelope, which is 5.5 by 4 1/4, then you need to be sure that you don't stick your leaves and flowers up too high, because then it will be taller than the 5.5 inch envelope, which I sort of did on my first card, but I kind of just ripped off the leaves and re-glued them back in, and I don't think you could tell the difference. And you can see here when I glued this one, you could see a little bit of the stem is at the bottom, and I just clipped that off to make it look more. And I like the way the back looks with the hardwood all the way through. Now I have one more that I'm trying to figure out how to stick it in here without the stem being visible. And this is the last one. So this liquid glue dries pretty quickly, so you don't have to worry about it. And once you stick it in there, it's completely done. You can just pull it out for your sentiment and stick it right back in, and it just makes a traditional size card. I think it's really lovely. So thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this card. If you haven't checked out my blog yet, please click on it below. And if you haven't subscribed, I would love to have you subscribe and like my video. There is another Mother's Day project on my blog that you should check out. And you should also click the next button and continue on with the one stamp at a time blog hop that's going on today. Thank you.